Hello viewers, this is Dr. P. Mary Anupama. Today, let us study about food safety management tools. Food safety management tools comprise of the following. First one is conduct a risk assessment. So always microbiological safety objectives are to be met and these are to be established. There is a need to establish and determine that microbial contamination is under control. So that is what is conducting a risk assessment. Establish food safety objectives. So here the maximum level of microorganisms or the hazardous microorganisms that are considered to be acceptable when a person consumes the food. That is what is establishing food safety objectives. In the previous video, we have seen the critical limits, the upper and the lower limits. So the uppermost, that is the maximum amount that will not be hazardous to the consumer. That is what is determined here. Next one is achievable food standard objectives. So whatever objectives that you are setting, make sure that you are going to achieve it throughout the food chain. Next one is establishing microbiological criteria when appropriate. Based upon the food product, the experts will decide, the experts from the food microbiology, they'll decide what sorts of microbial criteria are to be set, what sorts of food contaminants, the biological contaminants will be there. It can be protozoa, bacteria, fungi, viruses, whatever it may be. So these people will intervene and set the criteria. Next one is establish acceptance procedures for the food at the port of entry. So here we need to inspect the facilities, inspect the operations, certification standards if they are maintained, microbial testings if they are to be maintained. All these are the procedures which are routinely followed. Okay, these and even the list of suppliers, that means these suppliers which are giving us the raw materials, they are to be approved suppliers. So every aspect of the food production unit, they need to set up this acceptable procedures from the port of entry to all these operation procedures. So all these are the aspects of food safety management tools. Food safety management also includes hazard analysis critical control point, that is HACCP. So food hygiene, if it is maintained, we can prevent food poisoning. And this is the main principle of food hygiene and it has to be maintained throughout the food chain. This is achievable by following few things. First one is we have to educate and train the food handlers and even the consumers in the application of safe food production practices. Next one is the premises or where the production is being done, that has to be inspected for consistent hygiene practices. And these people, they have to adhere to those practices. Next one is microbiological testings. So the microbiologists, they test for the presence or absence of foodborne pathogens and even the toxins. Outlines of HACCP. So three control stages must be established when you are saying that you are implementing HACCP. First is preventing the microorganisms from contaminating the food by practicing hygiene production methods or hygiene production measures. So here you have to examine every ingredient that is entering into the premises. You have to maintain the premises clean. The equipment has to be clean. How the equipment is being cleaned at the end of each batch, and disinfection protocols if they are being maintained, and even the personnel who are working, how they are maintaining personal hygiene. This is also dealt. Next, we have to prevent the microorganisms from growing the food, and also during the process of growth they may form toxins. Even that has to be prevented. And how you achieve this? This is achieved by either chilling the food or freezing the food, or they may reduce the water content, that is reduction of water activity we call it, or by maintaining a pH. All these processes, if you practice, this will reduce the microbial growth, but you cannot say that it 100% destroys the microorganisms. Next one is eliminate any of the foodborne microorganisms. Say for example, you can go for sterilization methods, time and temperature processing methods, or by addition of some preservatives also, you can ensure that the HACCP is maintained, that is the three control stages from preventing the foodborne pathogen growth is maintained. Here we talk about temperature control of microbial hazards. By maintaining certain temperatures, that is critical limit of temperature, and by exposing the food to certain times, we can definitely control the microorganisms to less than 10 cells. So if this is done, definitely you can ensure that the food is hygiene for consumption. So here is an equivalent cooking time and temperature regimes which are given by the Department of Health UK. At 60 minutes, I keep it at 60 degrees, I keep it at 45, 65, 10 minutes, 70 minutes at 70 degrees cooking, I leave it for 2 minutes, 75 degrees for 30 seconds, 80 degrees for 6 seconds. If I do at 80 degrees for 6 seconds, definitely I am going to bring down the microbial count and also kill some of the spores that can be heat killed. Here is an example of Escherichia coli 015H7 and the effect of cooking temperature on survival of E. coli. At 58.2 degrees centigrade, this is the viable count. It has reduced by 6 log cycles per minute. So it is 28.2 6 log cycles it has reduced. At 62.8, when the temperature has increased by just around 4.5 or so, the viable cell count has decreased by 10 times. For every 5 degrees, we have seen that there is a further 10 times decrease in the cell count. So this is the effect of cooking temperature on Escherichia coli. And here, even the cooling period. So once I have heated the sample, again I'll be cooling it down to room temperature before I store it somewhere. So the cooling period for this also should be short. If you leave it like that for some time, that 10 minutes or 30 minutes which you are leaving outside, that is sufficient for spore growth. So it has to be very much short to prevent spore outgrowth and germination mainly of this mesophilic bacteria like Clostridium and Bacilli. So the cooking process, it also creates an anaerobic environment, and that environment is ideal for Clostridium species. So you have to definitely think about cooking temperature and again the cooling period that you are exposing the food to. Next comes the holding temperature for food. So these are the general recommended holding temperatures for food. That means at what temperature we have to store the foods. So we have foods categorized as cold served foods. That means less than 8 degrees we can keep them. Next is hot served foods which are above 63. And here you see that Clostridium species, they do not grow below 10 degrees. That means at this temperature. We have Staphylococcus aureus that can produce toxins above 10 degrees centigrade, but this particular organism, it can multiply even at 6 degrees centigrade. So if there is any temperature abuse, that means if you are just leaving it at 10 and again trying to cool it to 6, again getting back to 10, if such things you are doing, that is what is temperature abuse. This can lead to Staphylococcus aureus growth and even the toxin production. And these toxins, they are not inactivated even if you are heating the food to 72 degrees centigrade. So that means you have taken the food, refrigerated it, again taken it out from the deep fridge to normal fridge, normal shelf, and then again you have brought down to room temperature, left it for half an hour, and then you are trying to cook it. While cooking also, people don't wait, they just fast. If bubbles are coming, if some fumes are coming, that's it, it's done. So properly, thoroughly we have to cook it, then only you can prevent this Staphylococcus aureus. Next, even the chilled foods, they should be stored below 32 degrees centigrade, then only you can prevent this germination of spores. This Clostridium botulinum, it is very good at it. So these are the proper holding temperatures. So keep hot foods, if it is a hot food, keep it at above 57 degrees centigrade. And if you are going for storing the food at low temperatures, if you want to cool the foods, keep it below 5 degrees centigrade. So this is what we have to see, either cool or like this. Now how do the employees store the food? So upon receiving, they have to store the food, and this is done in storing areas. So these storing areas means first we have to see that the storing areas, they have to be dry, and refrigeration has to be there, proper freezer storage has to be there. So there are some aspects which have to be considered when you're talking about storing food. First one is storage upon receiving. So immediately we have to place the food in a proper storage place, so that you can avoid the bacterial growth. A clean dry place in the freezer or refrigerator, wherever the temperature that is suitable. So if it is a cold one, you keep it at less than below zero. If it is a lower temperatures, that means lower than 41.41 degree Fahrenheit, then you can refrigerate like that. At times, you need to keep it at high, little bit high, not more. At times, some foods they require humidity also. So 50 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, at 50 to 70 humidity you keep it, and you store the items in dry places at that temperature. So this is how we have to categorize the foods and then see where you have to store them. This is freezing, say for example, mutton, such products, red meat, or when you're going for fish, they have to be stored immediately at zero. Some ice cream also we keep it here, of course. Vegetables we keep like this. uh, some vegetables and some things like curd, we keep it like that for some time and then we use it. So at home also we practice these things. Place foods in appropriate storage area. So accordingly we have to place them. We have refrigerated foods, frozen foods, and then dry foods. Refrigerated food examples include our ready to eat foods, then fish and seafood items, whole cut raw beef, whole cut raw pork, ground or processed meat, raw poultry, all these things, they are to be refrigerated. Some are frozen like ice creams. Then we also have dry foods like some dry fruits which are refrigerated, or some dry seeds which are refrigerated, which are to be stored like that, so that to prevent contamination. Now the third step is we have to keep all the food items in the shelves, right? But these shelves, they are to be 6 inches above the floor. So that is the next thing which you have to keep in mind. It has to be 6 inches above the floor. This will allow circulation of air and even proper cleaning of the shelves will be done. Next thing is we have to store food in such a way that it doesn't come into direct contact with the sunlight. Next thing is use first in first out rotation of products. We call it as the FIFO principle. So today if you have placed something inside and tomorrow also you have purchased the same product, the first thing which is kept inside has to be removed and used. That is what is first in first out. This is just a normal example, but at industrial scale, at large scale, they label all those stacks and accordingly they'll be removing. The one which has gone inside first will be moving out first. Next one is mixing old food with new food is not at all acceptable. We never mix it like that in the industries. And they have to label them. That is the dates, the receiving date or the use date. A pack is there. If today they have used, they have to name it, label it that today this much is used. So and so date and time. So that tomorrow again you pick it up and complete the stack. Next one is usage of the appropriate containers. The containers in which you are trying to package the material or store the material, it has to be dry, clean and intact. So if necessary, you can repackage the food in clean, well labeled airtight containers also, but proper packaging is to be done, and this is done after the package is opened. Next one is, food is never kept in chemical containers. So if there is any chemical container, never keep your food in that. And even the chemicals, they are never to be kept in food storage containers. This is one precaution which you have to take care. Now, how we keep this storeroom sanitation? We know that in the storeroom we have the shelves. Shelves will be 6 inches above, and you'll be storing the food, you'll be labeling them. Now, how to maintain it clean? You have to keep it very clean. It has to be very neat, and no garbage should be there. All the items, they have to be, if there is any expiry date, you have to keep checking. If it is expired, you should not use it, rather we have to dispose it. And next thing is, this one I have already dealt, and we have to always check for this rodents and insects. They leave some things, rodent spots, they'll be leaving, insect remains will be there, so you have to check them. If at all they are there, you have to notify the maintenance people or the person who is in charge of the storeroom, so that they can get rid of them, they can help you get rid of them. Then temperature control. So always we have to keep on checking the temperatures of the refrigerator, the freezer, or even the dry storeroom. And like in industries, they have people appointed for every shift. They have internal thermometers as well as external thermometers. They'll be recording the temperatures of the cold storage units, and they'll be noting them in the logs. If there is any deviation, then they immediately notify to the person who is in charge. Okay, and one more thing is, the storage area is not to be overloaded. So if it is overloaded, this prevents airflow, and it becomes very hard, the refrigerator, it struggles hard to stay cold. And one more thing is, one more caution is, when you are cooling hot foods in the refrigerator, you cannot directly put the hot one in the refrigerator, as it will warm up that cool area. So that's why you have to cool it down, fast cooling, and then you have to put it in the refrigerators. Okay, and always we have to keep the units, whatever it may be, they have to be closed. And one more thing is, people have to consider this defrosting also. You cannot accumulate ice at regular intervals. Defrosting and proper maintenance is to be done. Next is monitoring and record keeping. So people are there, designated people will be there who keep these call logs, catalogs or logs of every cold storage units, and they have this personals who are in charge of this temperature logs. They'll be keeping on reviewing, and if any deviation is there, then they go and do the corrective action. So they have to report the problem, and they have to do the maintenance. So monitoring of logs, it has to be kept, and these are to be kept according to the federal regulation. That means what they do is, every 6 months, at a period of every 6 months, they'll be checking this monthly temperature records, and accordingly they send the reports to the management, so that corrective action can be done. So here, one thing is corrective action. They have to discard any stored item that is unsafe to eat. That means if it is expired, expiry date has come, or if there is any crack, or if there is any improper sealing that is found, immediately the personnel, they can check, and they have to eliminate it. So the employees have to be trained. They are trained and retrained, so that they see that all the appropriate time to temperature controls of the food safety, they are maintained, and the conditions are maintained. There are various physical methods also to control this microbial hazards. Like we have this microbial control for food preservation, which they do. That means here, the common control methods which all of us know are heating at high temperatures, exposing to radiation, filtration, desiccation, etc. All these methods, these are non-specific methods, but what they do is they'll be damaging the microorganisms non-specifically. So they may disrupt the membranes, or they change the membrane permeability of the microorganisms, or they may damage the proteins. Nucleic acid denaturation may be done, or degradation or chemical modification is done so that the microbial growth is prevented. Heat is one common method which is used, the physical method. And here, this is very effective in controlling the microbial contamination. The simplest heating one is cooking and canning. So here, uh, this kills microorganisms by altering their membranes, and even denaturation of proteins is done during the process of heat exposure. And you have what is known as thermal death point, TDP, of microorganisms. So this TDP, it is the lowest temperature at which all the microbes are killed in a 10-minute exposure. Or you may also define it as the length of the time needed to kill all microorganisms in a sample at a given temperature. This is what is thermal death point, which is determined. So this includes various sterilization methods or procedures like autoclaving. Uh, we use this commonly, but boiling is less effective. We do boiling at home, right? But this is less effective because endospores, they don't just die in the 5 minutes or 10 minutes boiling that they do. They require up to 20 hours of boiling. Then only endospores will get destroyed. So that's why people go for autoclaving. One best method is pasteurization. So this is again one best method of microbial control used in food industry. Traditionally, pasteurization, it is used to kill pathogens and also to reduce the spoilage causing microorganisms and to maintain the quality of food. Initially discovered by Louis Pasteur, he was the first one to work on it in 1860, and what he did was he used pasteurization to prevent spoilage of beer and wine. But today we use the same principle to kill heat sensitive pathogens in the milk. All the milk that we get is pasteurized milk, and it is also used for other food products like apple juice and even honey. So the method that is used in pasteurization, it is a balance of temperature as well as the duration of time that is used for treatment. And here we have two types. One is high temperature short time pasteurization, or HTST pasteurization. In this, the milk is exposed to 72 degrees centigrade for 15 seconds. While in ultra high temperature pasteurization, the milk is exposed to 138 degrees centigrade for just 2 or 3 seconds. That's it, not more than that. This helps to store milk for longer duration without any refrigeration, this one. But the disadvantage is you can see that this is very high temperature. It can alter the proteins of the milk. So you may find a slight change in the taste and smell of milk. Then refrigeration and freezing. So exposing microorganisms to low temperatures. This is also one easy method and also effective method of microbial control. And here we may control mesophilic, but you cannot control psychrophilic organisms which prefer cold temperatures. So refrigerators which we use in the kitchen, they work between 0 to 7 degrees centigrade. So this temperature, it inhibits the microbial metabolism, and also it slows the growth of microorganisms to the maximum extent. And if you are freezing below -2, actually it will stop the microbial growth, and it also even kills some susceptible microorganisms. Some, they cannot survive below 2 degrees. So according to this US Department of Agriculture, USDA, so the only safe way that frozen foods can be thawed from the refrigerators to be immersed in cold water and changed every 30 seconds. That means you take the frozen food, keep it in cold water, okay, then remove the water and again keep it in another cold water, or you directly put it in microwave. So doing like this, you can prevent giving the organisms a conducive environment to growth. In addition, you have this halted bacterial growth. like at 0 or 7, you have halted the growth, right? But when you are thawing, that is bringing it to room temperature, it may restart. So the thawed food, immediately it is to be treated like any fresh perishable food product. So once you have thawed it, immediately you have to cook it and then consume it. Don't just leave it like that for hours. This is one precaution which people take. Next method is pressure. So exposing to high pressure, this also kills microorganisms. Around 100 to 800 megapascals they give. So in food industry, what they use is they use this high pressure processing. You call it as pascalization. This is used to kill bacteria, yeast, molds, parasites, viruses, etc. so that you maintain that good food quality and you extend the shelf life of food. This also kills the vegetative cells, like exposing this to this high pressure. It denatures the vegetative cells protein. So what you see is that at times, uh, you are denaturing the vegetative cells, but endospores, they may survive at even these high pressures. That is one thing about this pressure. Next one is desiccation. That is nothing but drying. So we preserve the foods like raisins or prunes or jerky, all the dry fruits we preserve by drying. So microbes, you know that for their growth they require water, for their metabolism they require water, for their survival they do it. In the absence of water, their growth is halted. So you see that it is halted but not killed, and their endospores will be there. So in such cases, what they do is to remove the moisture content, you can sun dry it, or you can rely on evaporation and then desiccate it so that the moisture content is removed and the microbial growth is arrested. We also have freeze drying or lyophilization. It is a rapid method of freezing wherein the water sublimes in the presence of vacuum and you just suck out the water as vapor. So here it is a combination of low temperatures and applying of suction so that you remove the water and thereby you are controlling the microbial growth. So lyophilized items, you can store them at room temperature. You need not refrigerate them. In food industry, this is practiced when you want long-term storage or even for transportation of microbial cultures. They do it by lyophilization. So many microorganisms, they do not survive this even the hyperosmotic conditions. Say for example, you take honey, 80% sucrose. So in this environment also microbes, they don't survive. You can eliminate the growth of microorganisms by just adding honey also to some of the food items. You can add salt to fish, the salt fish, they add the salt and dry it, right? So salted meat, salted fish, and even some fruits which are preserved by adding sugar or making the fruits in the form of jams and jellies, that also improves their shelf life. But molds may attack such sugar added items. So we have to again keep on checking. Next is exposing the food to radiations. So high energy radiation, it can kill the microorganisms. So we have many ionizing radiations, X-rays, gamma rays, high energy electron beams, etc. These ionizing radiations, what they do, they penetrate into the cells, they alter the membrane structure, they damage the cell components and all such things. So these ionizing radiations like X-rays or gamma rays, they can affect the double-stranded DNA. They can induce mutations, thereby kill the organisms. So X-rays and gamma rays, these penetrate the paper or the plastic in which the food is packaged. So you can package the food and then sterilize it. And you have packaged dry spices. These are sterilized by using gamma radiations. So because gamma radiations, they easily penetrate paper, plastic, and even thin sheets of food, metal tissues. I have non-ionizing radiations also like UV light. We all know that UV light, it causes thymine dimers in the DNA strands, and this induces mutations in the DNA, which in turn will kill the microorganisms by preventing their DNA replication. So UV lamps, we know that they are used even in water purification units. But gamma radiation, it is considered to be very safe and effective when you are trying to sterilize meat, poultry, shellfish, fresh fruits and vegetables, eggs with shells, spices and seasoning. In industries, membrane filters are used to remove microorganisms from water. So membrane filters, there is a use for liquids, water, it goes through the small pores and microorganisms, they get blocked up because the pore size of these filters is less than 0.2 micrometers, while the smallest of the average bacterium size is 1 micrometer. So as the water is moving through the filters, the microorganisms are retained while only filtered ones will be moved, and such water is used in food preparation. So this is all about the food safety management tools and some methods which are adopted by the industries to prevent microbial growth. Thank you.